Good evening, everybody. This is Cinnamon Noir.
And this is the Ramen Shaman.
Welcome to Alwa's Awakening. As you can see the text right there. So every time you start up the game, it starts with this little thing, which seems a little overbearing, ultimately, but I do appreciate the time that the developer sunk into this game. It's a very interesting little game that, more than almost any other I've played recently, resembles old games.
Yeah.
It's, it kind of has the retro aesthetic of Shovel Knight. It looks very similar to Shovel Knight. Not quite as good, but...
I did get an immediate Shovel Knight vibe there.
Mm-hmm. And the graphics also are not quite... I'm sorry, I should say, the gameplay is also not quite as good as Shovel Knight, but that's a little much to expect. I got this game on sale, and I think it was a very good deal. But, let's just get started, and we'll get right into it. I was just listening to the music here for a second. That distracted me. This game does have excellent music. Probably about even with Shovel Knight in that respect. Though it's more old-fashioned, if you know what I mean. The music is more like the kind that loops. The kind you'd expect to hear actually on the NES. If anything, this game looks back more to the NES than to the SNES, like Shovel Knight did. NPCs have less to say, it's more tight and streamlined.
Well,
anyway,
Shovel Knight introduced a lot of things from like later, I think like 16-bit era, like parallax scrolling for one thing.
It kind of threaded the needle. It used some things from 16-bit, but it was mostly an 8-bit inspired aesthetic. And of course, the thing that inspired its gameplay design the most was an 8-bit series, Mega Man. Now, just like Shovel Knight is kind of a reinterpretation of Mega Man, this game's like a modern reinterpretation of Zelda 2. It's got combat, it's got puzzle solving, there's sort of a judicious mix of both, and there's also a hefty element of exploration. The plot is basic. I mean, you've seen it play out right in front of you right now. This guy named Vicar, very strange name, takes over Alwa, which is actually the name of the country, not the main character. And he has these weird, like, magical Technicolor ring wraiths who help him take over.
I was gonna say, I think Alwa's a pretty cool guy.
F fights ring wraiths and doesn't afraid of anything. Yeah. So many dead memes.
And extremely dead, like...
Cinnamon Noir, where dead memes go to die. Actually, that itself is a dead meme from the abridged YouTube, Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged. God, I can't even talk about my own memes without memeing.
I was gonna say yo dog, but we've done enough dead memes for today.
Stop it, Greg. This is getting too meta. Anyway, so this is our main character. Her name is Zoe, which is actually rather appropriate. Zoe is Greek for like an animal or a living thing. So it's like she's bringing life back to this ravaged land. And that's why the land is awakening. Yeah. I also like Chloe, which is another Greek name. Chloe specifically refers to plant life. It means like a green shoot.
Oh, like, same root derivation as chlorophyll.
I think so. Not entirely sure. Now, Chloris was the name of a nymph in classical Greek mythology. That's something.
Well, now I have to look it up.
During the video, because that's how we do things.
Pretty much.
Yep. Prepare for keyboard clacking in 3, 2, 1.
Hey, I type very quietly, I'll have you know.
I'm judging by myself. I type very loudly. Anyway, I love that little staff, because the way it's emitting light is a lot like Link's Awakening, which, of course, in terms of the name, this game definitely cribs from that, and also sort of in the design. But less than you'd think, since most of Link's Awakening is top-down, what this does have something in common with is the weird, vertical sections of Link's Awakening. I don't know if you've ever played it. But in a lot of dungeons, you'll have a vertical section, briefly. The vertical sections in Link's Awakening are weird. They feature enemies from the Mario series. They're like going into a completely different dimension from the actual game. Maybe part of it is the idea that Link's having a dream. So, like, you know, it was like the first crossover in Nintendo history. It wasn't, but it was the first, like, that I know of. So yeah, you run into Goombas in those Link's Awakening segments. You run into Thwomps. One of the bosses is actually a Thwomp.
So, this is weird.
This game, yes, it is.
No, I was looking into etymology.
Yeah,
the name Chloe looks to be pretty much direct from Greek.
I think it is, yeah.
Meaning blooming or verdant. Chlorophyll is from chloros, meaning green, and phulon, meaning leaf. So no, the etymologies are completely different.
It's an interesting thing you bring up, though, because, I mean, I know this is totally unrelated to the game, but it's basic right now, so I'll do that. A lot of people don't realize this. In Greek, the letters for Y and U, like those sounds, they're almost exactly the same. Which is why you'll sometimes see things pronounced with a U sound, even though it's a Y when it's spelled. Oddly enough, you know how cycle means wheel? Well, Kuklos is another way of pronouncing Cyclos. And that's where we get the Ku Klux Klan from.
Oh, yeah.
Ku Klux was literally from Kuklos, meaning circle.
Yeah,
Isn't that interesting?
That's a bit of a weird place for our etymology to go, but I actually did know that their name came from the word
from circle.
Greek word for circle.
Anyway, I was trying to get that orb, but you really can't. You have to come back for it later. So this game has 3 major power-ups, and one thing I like about it is that even though it's very simple, they do a good job of making each power-up feel hefty. So it really does change the game. Starting out, it can be a little boring, but you just have to play it for a little while to get to the part where it gets more interesting. By the 3rd dungeon, it's actually quite challenging. The people who made the game actually tell you in the menu that it was meant to be a tough game, so please don't turn assist mode on. But they do offer it just in case, which I think is nice of them. One of the biggest things that assist mode does that's helpful is that when you die in it, instead of reappearing at the last save point, you'll reappear in the room. Super Meat Boy style. Which, since that is very important for not losing progress, I have turned it on for this Let's Play. Viewers, you can thank me later. This will mean much less wasting of your time.
Honestly, I am pretty on board with the idea of easy options in harder games.
I agree. If they don't break the game. I mean, if having them in there, the mere fact that they do exist doesn't break the game for everybody. Some games, the way it's designed, it does.
How would it do that?
Well, like for one thing, Matthew Matoses talked about this. In the remake that they did of Abe's Odyssey, Oddworld, they allocated a button to showing your health, which only exists on easy mode. Like a really major button that could have been used for other things. And that kind of worked against the mechanics.
Well, yeah, that is that's a pretty
That's such a bad decision that it seemed obvious, yeah.
Yeah,
but not to just add water.
Pretty obvious design oversight.
Anyway, so we were trying to get past that knight who is guarding the first dungeon, the Amber Sacellum. He told us we needed to get the map first, so we went to this town. And this guy tells us that we're not going to be able to pass this bridge until we get the power from the first dungeon.
Actually, can I ask a question, because I don't really know anything about Abe's Odyssey?
Go for it.
I've
never played it, but you go for it.
You wouldn't just want to have your health visible all the time?
In the original, there was no health. 1-hit kills.
Oh, so in the easy mode...
But in the easy mode, they could also have it displayed all the time, and yeah, I don't see the disadvantage of that either, so...
I mean...
What the hell, just add water?
Yeah, like, if it interfered with the UI, but if that's the case, then we're looking at
You don't want a button to show it up. I know.
Well, then if it actually interferes with the UI, that means you screwed up the UI design.
That's true. Anyway, the NPCs in this game, don't expect too much from them. They have very prosaic dialogue. It's not very interesting. I also strongly suspect that the people who made this, their first language is not English, because some of it's very stilted. It actually reminds me a lot of Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest, which this game has several similarities with. It's sort of like an odd combination of Zelda 2 and Castlevania 2.
You don't belong in this world.
That's Castlevania 5, going by strict numbering. It is my favorite Castlevania, though, so... I've actually just finished a script for a video that talks all about Metroidvanias, so you know. It's been on my mind lately. So this game has keys. The keys are an excuse to get you to explore more in the dungeons. The dungeons, I have to say, give them the credit, they're really huge, which is kind of cool. Put together, they're probably larger than the overworld. Another nice thing is they mesh very well with the overworld. So, for instance, there's a save point in this, which we saw at the beginning, which is in the Amber Sacellum, but it's right next to the opening area, the Forsaken whatever it is. And all you have is a little loading screen between them. But other than that, it's fun to discover the shortcuts. So one thing this game has that a lot of games back from the day did not have is deliberate shortcuts, which kind of make it like Dark Souls. I know everyone compares every game to Dark Souls, but I think this is legitimate. So basically what I'm saying is this game is a combination of Zelda 2, Castlevania 2, and Dark Souls. Which is awesome. How can you not like that?
I think what annoys me most is when people people act like Dark Souls is their only the only reference point for difficulty.
Which makes it kind of a bankrupt reference. Anyway, I want to get that coin, but it's kind of hard to get from here. The first time I played through this game, I just skipped it and came back later when I had more platforming tools. But then I noticed one thing you can actually do is you can just fall through these spikes. They're fake. The most annoying aspect of old school game design. Literally fake walls.
Yeah, that was... And the thing
I actually thought it was kind of cool when I discovered it, although I was still annoyed at my wasted time.
Yeah, it's kind of... Well, it's one thing to have a fake wall, it's another thing to have a fake spike pit.
Oh, but that's classic in old games. There's lots of fake spike pits. Mario has fake spike pits in some games. Oh, yeah. No, these guys did their homework. This game isn't fantastic in terms of world design, but it uses a lot of techniques that are old school. Anyway, we can't flip that switch yet. We need to get something green. The switches in this game are color-coded. Purple ones you can just step on, because you're purple. Green ones you need to get a green thing, which we'll be seeing in this episode, because it's what you get in the first dungeon. There are 4 dungeons in the game. In the first 3, you get your basic 3 powers. Once you've gotten the third one, you can go back to earlier dungeons and get access to basically upgraded versions of the earlier ones. And then the final one is, I'm pretty sure, the last content of the game. There might be a 5th dungeon afterward, I'm not sure. I haven't actually finished this game yet. What I'm doing is, as I get through each major section of progress, I'm then recording the Let's Play version of it.
That makes sense.
And I think that'll make it a little more spontaneous and interesting. By the way, here's the first room in the game that's actually kind of difficult. You have to deal with all of these falling blocks. And if you get through the harder version of it, then you get the orb. These orbs are actually a boss difficulty system. There are 99 in the game. Every time you get to a new orb level, by collecting enough of them, bosses will have 1 less health. Which can be very helpful, actually. Although, the bosses in this game are a little easy, gotta say. Oh, I forgot to mention, these green blocks can also press the green switches, in addition to your later green power.
That makes sense.
Yes. I would say this game does a very good job of using, what would you call it, like game design language to tell you what to do, which is something like, Aaron Hansen, for instance, to pick a random YouTube commentator, has talked a lot about conveyance. And even though this game, I shouldn't bash this game because I like it a lot, but it's not fantastic. But at the same time, it has really good conveyance, and that makes up for a lot of other problems. If anything, I'd say its one major flaw is it's a little too simple. Shovel Knight was really complicated because of cool level design stuff.
Solid understanding of player psychology is very important.
Yeah, a lot of games have gone wrong misunderstanding it. Anyway, this dungeon is a fairly typical design. I think it's pretty much standard throughout. It has... Basically, you start off in the dungeon, travel a little way through, and then by midway through, you're going into a special area that you're stuck in, and you can't get out of it until you find the special power. And then with its help, you finish the dungeon by going through the last little area. That's something that Zelda pretty much made a classic concept. Oh, here you have to learn how to make little hops. That'll become important later.
Or just hit the spikes. I do kind of like that the spikes don't insta-kill you, because...
Well, later on there are spikes that insta-kill you, which is why it's important to learn how to do short hops now.
That's annoying, because...
It is.
I always kind of annoying that, like, swords just do 1 point of damage, but spikes would, like, instantly murder you.
Well, it's based on the concept of a spike pit, which if you landed in it, you'd almost certainly die.
True.
But probably from blood loss, not from instant trauma. Although some of those spike pits, like, have you ever seen the movie Hidalgo?
A long time ago.
There's a spike pit in that movie that would definitely kill you, no matter who you are. Anyway, that was a random movie reference. So we have finally gotten the first power-up, which is this green block. Kind of similar to the Rod of Samaria from A Link to the Past. But in this game, it's used a lot more. They go farther with it, because obviously, A Link to the Past had like 20 different dungeon crawling items, and this game has 3. So they get creative with it, which I think is pretty cool, actually. But in its basic form, it substitutes for the double jump that you never get in this game.
Oh, that makes sense.
You can push it very close to the end of blocks before getting rid of it. Sometimes you will have to really cut that closely. And here we have a falling block, so I'm just making sure to be careful about it. I actually think I was distracted from the computer for a second, so bear with me. Should have just paused the game, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh well, let's just sit here and listen to this music. Video game characters look kind of depressed when they're just sitting there for a long time. It's kind of like reading Garfield without Garfield.
Oh, yeah.
It's just like, it becomes existential at some point.
Yeah, that did become, like, honestly more interesting, but...
Definitely. Well, what's weird about it to me is that... Well, let's just talk about Garfield versus without Garfield. If you look at it, it's obvious that that kind of is what Jim Davis is going for. Is that... Why have I forgotten the guy's name? Is he also just called
John?
Jim? John. Why John Arbuckle is such a crappy life. I mean, really, you don't need Garfield to convey how horrible John Arbuckle's life is.
Yeah.
Garfield's like almost a friendly distraction from it.
But
the creepy part is there even when Garfield's there. Like, John Arbuckle's still a sad nebbish, even with Garfield quipping over him.
Which is kind of the point, yeah.
Right, so what's the appeal? I've never understood Garfield that much.
I don't know.
I don't know. I used to not like Peanuts too, though, and now I think Peanuts is freaking amazing. So, who can say? Maybe when I'm 40, I'll freaking love Garfield.
Honestly, people pick on, like, the most mimetic aspects of it, but I think what's weird about it is it's just, like, the physical comedy of people abusing each other.
You're talking about Garfield?
Yeah, I'm not even kidding. Like, it is...
For a minute, I thought you were talking about Peanuts, and I'm like, yeah, that's also true.
Like, the protagonist is just relentlessly abusive, but, like...
That is true. Garfield's a jerk.
It really is just, like, physical and emotional abuse for laughs.
I honestly think it was perfect casting when they chose Bill Murray to play Garfield in those animated movies. Because even though it's kind of slumming it for him, he basically is like Garfield in real life. He's just an asshole. Anyway, so we don't manage to get enough orbs to make this boss easier, which is fine, because it's kind of an easy boss to begin with. I say that, I am going to die against him the first time, but, you know. That's just to show people what all his attacks look like, obviously.
Obviously.
Everything I do in a Let's Play is for a reason.
Like Worf getting his ass kicked in The Next Generation.
Oh, did he do that deliberately? Boy, that was quite
Sure.
a gambit on his part. He was trying to get the enemy to let its guard down. Whoever they were. Actually, the whole thing about Worfing is that Worf's ass got kicked all the time, right? Which eventually undermined the whole idea of him being powerful in the first place.
I don't know how often in the show. I know there's a lot of individual examples of that happening, and yeah, I think it did kind of...
From what I'm given to understand, they basically abused it. Like, it's supposed to be Worf is so strong, so look how tough this bad guy is, because they beat Worf.
Yeah,
But everybody beats Worf.
The problem is, if you do that for just like a Monster of the Week...
Right. Speaking of Monster of the Week, here we have the first boss, Vicious Keeper. He's a giant spider. I really like his little baby spiders doing this weird routine that kind of reminds me of the Mega Man spider bosses that have been throughout the years.
Mm-hmm.
Only they had that weird Japanese ladder game. I forget what it's called. Amida Kuji or something like that. Where it would go down in a pattern that was predictable, but you had to guess it. I'm not explaining it very well. You can just look it up. But, anyway, this spider boss is actually fairly simple if you know what you're doing. You just have to use the block to make a space that's safe for yourself. Dodge the spiders, and then get up on top of the block because you'll start doing the projectiles. And then he actually stays around a fairly long time after he's shot these, so you don't need to worry about getting a shot in quickly. It makes more sense in this fight to dodge his attack, like focus on dodging his attacks rather than focusing on hitting him. You can get 2 hits in if you're willing to take a hit, but that's not always the best idea. Anyway, now he starts firing these faster, and when you've gotten halfway through his health, he starts firing in a different pattern. Overall, though, it is a fairly easy boss, which I guess is appropriate for the first boss. So now he starts firing 2 at once, so you gotta make sure to do a little carefully timed jump.
Yeah, I think block placement in this early section, when you're getting ready for him to come down, is important.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And then I just rush in and get him because I don't have to worry at this point. So yeah, fairly simple boss.
I do wish they'd give you some indication of boss health in games like this.
They did. It was on the left-hand screen.
Oh, derp.
He had 6 little units of health.
I do wish I was less of a clueless burf when we're doing Let's Plays like this.
Oh, that's fine. Makes it more fun.
Now, Cuphead's the one that really needs health bars for bosses.
Yes, it does. Cuphead needs to be a little more accommodating, just in general, in my opinion. I'm sure you already know my opinion, because I made a whole video about it.
Yeah.
Just whining, but you know.
Well, not necessarily easier, just like being more communicative would be nice.
Well, my ultimate thesis about Cuphead, and I think this is tied into the not being accommodating, is Cuphead's not really a cartoony game. It's a game with a cartoony art style, but what it is it's Contra.
Mm-hmm.
It is Contra, and it is Toho. It's a bullet hell game where it's all about twitch reflexes. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just not particularly cartoony. And I think the aesthetic kind of draws you in with the idea of goofy fun, but the game, actually playing the game, is not goofy fun. It's just challenge. You know, it's kind of sad to me because Cuphead was really unique. That's what drew people to it in the first place, right? It's got this cartoon aesthetic that no one else is trying to do. But I'd like to see a game do that was actually trying to be cartoony with its mechanics.
Oh.
And no one does that. I mean, people don't even seem to make many regular games these days with cartoony mechanics. One of the things I really liked about the original Rayman was that it was like that.
Oh, yeah.
It was all weird and outlandish. And I mean, that was also a hard game, but it was cartoony hard.
And then
if you know what I'm
Rayman
saying.
2 went, like, really kind of dark.
It was really dark. I loved the real-time slave counter on the pirate ship in Rayman. Like, every time it was a pirate thing, it was like, number of slaves, 3,000,006. Anyway, so we have now gotten through the first dungeon of 4, the Amber Sacellum, and gotten the little green block, which can get us over this bridge now, and take us to Central Alwa, which is the big exploratory central part of the game. That's a well. We'll find out what we can do with that later. This guy's telling us we can refill water if we had something to put it in. Spoilers, the coin we got in the first level has something to do with that, which is why it was such a pain not to get it the first time through when I played this game for the first time. Anyway, we will be seeing that on the next episode, so bye for now, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody.